Okay. For whatever reason, OBS is causing me a problem. Can we hear me now? Because I can see us now. Oh gosh, I gotta go through all that I just said. Okay, so we're gonna try this again. Oh boy, I said a bunch of stuff. Today, we're gonna start by looking at the tips I recommend. This one's hot because I was warming it up. I checked audio before we did all this, and it was fine. I don't know what's going on. Alrighty, so can you hear me now? Sound okay?
Good, we're good.
Good. Alright, so we're going to start with my recommendation, the Drawing with Fire set.
You did my job.
Yes, you did. Thank you. How many people did we lose?
Oh, time for a nap.
No! Okay, through Pat at Optima, the link's down in the description, as well as Mountain Woodcarvers, though they may be out of stock again. This is the 18M Spear Shader, 19M Ball Tip, 9M Writing, and the 17 SR Coarse Hair that I helped modify. And what we're going to do is look at what the different marks that these pins make and the different stuff you can make with them. Because sometimes you may not need a pin because another pin already does it and you like that pin. So we're going to get started with the 18M. Hopefully, is that everything I said? Oh, we're going to try to get through as many shaders in this live, and then we'll go shaders, ball tips, and skews next live, next week. So this is the 18M set on 3. Now this is, I'm going to zoom in. I'm also going to timestamp the live so that if you need to go back and look at a pin, it's easier for you to find. So just the footprint. That is the footprint for the 18M. The reason it looks like this is because it has a very, very slight curve to the tip that you really can't see, but you can kind of feel. And what I mean by that is if I drag down like this, and this is just 3, it's a little lighter. But if I use the tip, it's going to prove me wrong on this big board. This is birch. Alright, it's going to prove me wrong. Alright, so the different things the 18M can do. So we have our shading. So this is good for our general shading. Gradients, things of that things with that to get the nice smooth shading going from darks to light and lights to dark. You would use this pen, but it's also good for the curves and doing lines. This with a flick of your wrist. You can
oh, David has to go.
Hey, David. You can get some nice lines.
Next time.
Lines and curves. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Now the line is always going to be as thin as your tip. Meaning if it's a little thicker tip, you will never be able to get a line any thinner than the thickness of the tip. No matter how you do it, you might be able to go a little lighter like this, but in general, you'll never get anything thinner. So in using this, it would be for shading. I use it for hair. You can get a thicker line by using half the tip. The full tip gets you the thickest one, which will also be lighter because of how the pen's made. Tree branches, tree bark, fur, hair, buildings. That's pretty much all the general pyrography, and that's why I have the recommendation the way I do, is so that other than, I'd say, lettering, which some of these actually do great lettering as well, you would use these for animals, portraits, landscapes, buildings, things like that. So it these 4 pens cover a big range of the things you can burn with. The 19M ball tip and the 9M writer will also do lettering, and the 17 SR will do some lettering if it's more like block lettering and not cursive. So right now I'm heating up the ball tip. We're going to switch over to the 19M. This is great for lines. It's like using a ball tip pen. So We only get about this size. Well, that's the footprint of the pin. That is the most surface when you touch down even that you get in thickness. So the 19M is great for shading. I like to do it for small areas, kind of drag things out, going in circles. You can get a pretty even burn with that as long as you don't stop. If I stop or slow down, I'll get little blobs for where that tip might have stayed in one spot for half a second more. It will leave a blob. I'm wondering, I'm going to go ahead and go up to 3.5 so you guys can see better. Now, it does lines, but if you notice with the 19M, that is the thinnest line you're going to get. So we have to keep in mind the footprint, the actual part of the tip that touches down, however the thickness is, that's how thick you're going to get. If there's any way to angle it, you can get a thinner one like we did with the 18M. But with the ball tip, we have the same thickness no matter how we hold the tip. Now we might get a little lighter if we hold it up. Or thinner. Nope, we don't. So this one is great for shading, stippling. That's a stippling. That's used for shading as well. For lettering. Let's see here. I'm going to try to do this freehand. Now, depending on how dark you want the lettering, you might want to set this pin higher and just keep going. Make sure you're still moving it the whole time, because if you stop moving it, it will leave the blobs. Get different lettering. I tend to sign with this pen on the back of my work. If I go darker, if I go higher, I'll go to 4.5, just so we can see how much of an overburn, or there's another term for it. And because the audio messed with me, I'm like going blank.
Another term for what?
For when it overburns, when the heat from the pen, you got your burn, but then it also leaves the what I consider ugly overburn just from the heat of the pen being close to.
Like it bleeds over?
Yeah, it's a bleeding over, but there's another term, and I'm drawing a blank. So at hotter heats, it'll burn quicker.
Oh, everybody, well, not everybody. That's exaggeration. Teresa and Jay Wells are singing the praises of the 18M.
Yes. And his little sister pin 18S is just as awesome. Alright, we're going to switch over to the 9M. And I probably could turn the heat down to 4 on this one. So this is also good for the same things that the ball tip is, except you can get in a much smaller area. Think of the 9M as, so for our ball tips on Optima, we have the 19 extra large, the medium, the small. This 9M the modified writer is like the next size down on the ball tip size. So think of it like an extra small ball tip, even though because it's so small there is no ball. Does that make sense?
I know, it sounds funny.
I know it sounds funny. Alrighty, so you made a different coffee. I wish you would have known that.
Oh, you brought coffee?
I did. I thought you made the good stuff.
No, I thought you were making hot chocolate.
No, I was like, oh, you make coffee. I'll drink it. Yeah, I taste the difference. All right. So this will make, as you can see, it's a smaller footprint than the 19M, and we'll revisit this when we look at the ball tips all together. So we get into a much smaller area with this one. We can still do shading. It's going to take longer, so if you're doing shading in a small area, say the eyeball of an animal or person, within trees, if you've got you know, the bark going in different directions. You can get into that easier and kind of do your undercut of the burn so that with the undercut, it's the same as in wood carving. You undercut your burn line, and that's the shadow that makes it look like that area is pushed up a little further, even though it's a 2D piece of wood for burning. This is the thinnest line we can get. A little smaller than the 19M. I'm trying to, there we go. That is as thin as we can get. Definitely great for stippling. It will take longer, so I would use this stippling in a smaller area. Writing the same. I think I'm going to go ahead and go up to 4.5. That way, I'm not staying on the board. Why aren't you telling me I'm staying
on the board?
On the camera.
You were off to the side a little bit, but I could see you writing. I thought that's what you wanted.
So here is the writing. Now remember, you're always going to fight with the grain, especially on a thinner tip. It's easier for the grain to grab it. So we see a little bit more blobs. That's why I switched from this one to the 19M, because for me it just gave a little smoother burn for signing my name on the back. Let's see here. But I can get pretty darn small with writing with this, and that's at 4.5. So right now we have 3 sets of lines, all different lines. We have 3 forms of shading, but it's all different shading, though the 19M and the 9M are the same, just smaller because of the footprint of the pen. And we have writing, which I probably could pull off some writing with the 18M if you want me to come back and try that. Alright, so we move over to the 17 modified. And I think a lot of people want to see this because it does do more than lines. It does more than straight lines. Alrighty. I'm hot. Hot. Now, if you're not a part of the group, I've been writing some very funny, descriptive, I wouldn't say ads, so to speak, but information about the different tips. So down in the...
they're ads.
No, they're not ads because I'm not sponsored. None of this is sponsored. I'm not getting paid for any of this.
No, I just mean that they're very much 1/900 pieces.
Okay, and I'll switch it up because maybe some people don't like it.
Can you?
I can.
I don't believe it.
Alright, so we got our 17 SR modified. This is the mysterious pen. It's not photographed on the website yet. I know Pat is looking at changing web domains and stuff. Yeah, so he hasn't put it on the website. If you want to order this, you'd have to write it in the special request down at the very bottom of the form, or call Pat.
So what is that?
This is the 17 SR. This is the thinnest the tip will get. It is a V-cut curve. And the purpose of the modification of bringing this tip a little smaller is so that I can do this a lot easier. Or I can do this to get the curves. With the 17 straight, because it has a bigger tip, it's harder to get those curves, and see, I can do the curves better rolling
seems
to
like,
the right.
Seems like it follows the pen better, like follows your control better.
Yeah.
What did you just drop?
I didn't drop nothing. It was a ruler.
Oh.
But this pen the tip can get caught in the grain, so make sure your board is really smooth. Now, in the post for this pen, I talked about putting it on the side. So if you angle it on the side, it takes practice. Let's see if I can get it. I get a thicker line. Maybe angle too far. I said that you could get a shadow underneath And I'm kind of having a problem with that. So much for being able to do what I say. You can get a thicker line. Now, if you want this to be a shadow, what you could do the angle like this, and then go back and do next to it as well. Because I'm not getting, for some reason, I don't know if I'm frazzled or what, but I'm not getting it. We can also use this tip on just the tip, like this, to do shading. I wanted to make sure that this tip was capable of, say you're doing some fur, some hair, let's crisscross it, fill it in. So you're getting some of the hair that's more prominent in an animal, in the fur. But then you need some shading. You can turn the pen and get up into the areas that you wanted to kind of group out without switching pens. And that's what you really want to look for, is a pen that you can use for multiple things in order to just keep burning. You don't have to wait for something to cool off. I can even do stippling with this by turning it upside down. Now this is really small stippling, even smaller than the 9M. I can also, with this tip, you have to be careful with this. I don't know that I necessarily recommend it, but it can go from side to side for shading, which might work better if this is a long grain cut of wood, the way I've got it. If the grain was going this way, it would be a short grain, and it would run better shading wise this way if it was a short grain for this piece. And I'll show how. Because this way it's running with the grain, so it's being less spotty. And I can go back, tap in some more darks, draw it down. So this would be great for not only fur and hair, but tree trunks, grass, buildings, because you can get a nice line for buildings, borders. Let's see here, if I'm doing a letter, what it would be good for is, now mind you, I'm not good at lettering, other than I can write my name. Alright, so we got a D in. If I wanted it thicker, I could angle where I wanted it thicker, clean it up, and then I can run a second thin line to kind of make it stand out, and then I can use the tip to connect things. And so I can do lettering with this one now. Mind you, like I said, I'm not good at it, so it's not clean. I don't care to do lettering if I don't have to. Cross hatching, it would also be good for cross hatching. That would be shading as well. Cross hatching can also follow form. So we can do it this way. Alright, so those are the different strokes I can do with these different pens. I did say I was going to try lettering with the 18M. So
Beryl's asking if it would be spotty on a cross grain.
Doing which stroke? Because this was across the grain right here. Let me see if I can get it. Whereas that was going along with the grain. So yeah, it is a bit more spotty if I'm not going with the grain. Hopefully that shows. Blurry. Alright. I'll put on the 18 real quick and we'll check it for lettering, and then we'll move on to all our spear type shaders. The 2B, there's one thing I knew I should have done because I can't remember what the fish scale type pen is. I'm going to pull up the website so I can give you the right number. Luckily, that's quick while I'm waiting for a pen to heat up. I am hot.
Do you want me to turn off the heater?
Are you hot?
I'm fine.
Yes, please. Alrighty, so we're going to look at the spear shaders. We're going to look at the small round shader. Let's see there. There's a particular pen. What are you doing behind me?
Nothing.
Don't believe you. Where is the pen? The fish scale, which is the 13, and I believe I have the medium 13. Alrighty, so real quick, we'll do letters. Now, I'm going to bump this up to 4 so I don't have to fight with the tip. Alright, so I can do, of course, the outline of lettering, which probably would be better with the small, based on how I'm doing it, and I'm curving it just to see what it will do. It would help if I could spell. There we go. If I use just the tip, I can do block lettering. Let's see here. If I use just the tip, I can do a little cursive. So if lettering's what you do all the time, you're going to be much better at it than I am. In theory, all of the pens can do some form of lettering. And that's the Drawing with Fire set, which is the 18M, the 9M, the 19M ball tip, and the 17 SR. So now we are going to switch over to spear shaders, and we're going to start off first with the 18M. I gotta find my pencils, or 18S, so I can write down what's what. That way it's easier for you to find later. Alrighty, so I'm warming it up at 4. Get comfortable. There we go. So the footprint, we see that there was a pretty small, for what the pen looks like size-wise, footprint, and that's because of a little bit of tip to it. Ooh, we can go down and heat. This is the full footprint of the 18S, and it actually looks bigger. I need to let it heat up. Then the 18M. Both pens would be good for scales as well. I should have mentioned that. And the scales, you would overlap them like this. So lizards, snakes, kind of turn where maybe it's turning. As you can see, I'm getting different shading, and that allows things to look like things are on top of other things and overlapping. Like the 18M, definitely can do lines. And this pen is a little bit thicker than the 18M. Both can do the cross hatching and hatching, like we talked about before. That's our thinnest line we're going to get. Using just the tip, that's the thickest line we're going to get. Writing wise, I can write with it. Again, if you do lettering all the time versus when I don't, you're going to be better at it. Hair, fur, bushes, trees, any general shading this pen's good for, just like the 18M. Going in circles. This is the one I've actually been using a lot on the background for the wolf. At a little higher heat on the maple. I've been liking how it's burning. And that may be why Burl likes this pen better, because she burns on maple a lot more. And this does do a good job on maple. Also with the 18s, you can also do stippling. You can turn it over, get even smaller stippling. So try changing the angle of your pen. Unless it's a very thin skew, especially the Optima pens, should be strong enough that you can change angles and flip the pen, use the side to get different marks. So just using the tip, using the whole body on this, draw down shading. It's doing a very even shading. I've got it flat against the board. So we can do all kinds of stuff with that one as well. Do we have any questions so far? That way, I know where to go with this.
Not so far.
Not so far. Alright, so we are going to switch over to the 18L, which is the 18 large. This would be the pen. I use this one mainly for backgrounds. It has a big footprint, so I can get more area burned. I've got it bumped up to 4.5 because I really want to show the footprint of this pen. I like it for large backgrounds, especially excuse me, overlap the strokes. Here we go. So this is the footprint of the 18L. Probably should let it heat up more. Just so we can see what touches down if we just basically stamp it. This could also be used on one edge or the other. You can use it on the side just like the other two. In fact, this tip is showing lines that are thinner than the small, and that's because when the pen's made, the metal is thinner because Pat has to hammer it out and do what he does with his magic. So the 18S is going to have the most metal, therefore the thickest side. That made sense. Alright, so for dark backgrounds, I draw down, pick up, overlap, draw down. I try to go slower. And then I just keep overlapping. I could up my heat a little bit. What I don't want to do is gouge the wood with the heat, but I can go higher. There we go. Because my heat's higher, you're going to see smoke when you don't normally see it with me that often. So once I get into rhythm, this pen does a really good smooth background. Now, of course, this is up to the type of wood as well that you're burning on and how high you have the heat. And what I'm doing is it's the full flatness of the footprint of the pen. Because I picked it up, it's going to burn hotter when I touch down. I'm going to slow down. Let's see here. I could still do stippling with it even though it's a large pen. Because I'm using just the tip. It's going to be more kind of dashes than dots, and that's because of how the tip is rounded. It's still useful. It still can be used for shading. I can use the side of the pen, and then I can do my, I don't want signature ovals because that's probably the stroke I use the most to get an even burn. This one also works for large clumps of hair and fur as well. Again, good for silhouettes and distant trees. Remember, you want to use the pen that's closest to the size of your subject. So if you're doing a silhouette tree in the background and it's still a couple of inches high, you don't want to use a, say, 19M ball tip because the footprint is so small is going to take you forever. It's going to leave a lot of texture that maybe you don't want. So you always want to try to use the tip as close to the size of your subject as possible. So if it's a big area, you want to use a bigger tip. So now I think we've covered the 18s, and I know, Sheila, I know you like your 3B for background. I don't. Talking to bro. Alright, here's the 2B.
18L.
18L, that's what I just showed. 18L. Alrighty. I did wipe all my pens down before we did this, so that's why I'm wiping to make sure there's no residue. I'm going to turn my heat down because I don't need it that high. Now the 2B is a very similar shape. It's also a pretty thin tip, as in the line that you can get, but it heats differently than the 18Ms. So put that there. I've got it at 4, and it's probably going to be a little too hot for it. We'll see. Alright, so the footprint for the 2B down here is a little smaller. It's about an in-between of the 18 small and medium.
Sheila loves the 2B.
She's loving the 2B. Alright, so thickness of edge. All of these you can turn on their edge and use. So this is a little thinner than the 18S. This one also works great for fur, shading, lines. I'm not really going to be able to draw anything but thick letters with it. And then, yeah, it's not a pen unless you're filling in, meaning you've got block letters and you've done the outline. If that's what you choose to do, then you can go back with a pen like this and fill it in. Same with the 18s. Stippling is going to be dashes. But this could be good texture for tree bark. Rocks, some buildings, especially like stucco buildings. What else? When I'm not getting a burn that in my head that I want with the 18s, I switch over to the 2B. So they are interchangeable and they work great together. So this would be like a secondary shader that I would recommend. Does a great drawdown. Some pens don't necessarily do the oval overlap burn that I do, as well as others. Let's see here. I think I like this one better for the drawdown. It does do the oval circular burn, but I like it more for drawdown. So if I've got a line, like you don't burn with lines like that, but if I want a shadow, I can touch down at the line and draw down, and it will blend the burn line in with the shadow and draw down. So this pen's really good for that.
Spence wants to know how many pens there are in total.
Me or Pat? Because some of the
do.
Optima pens don't apply to us as pyographers. They're for wood carvers.
Okay.
Um,
So how many pyrographer pens are there? There's like 30 something, isn't there?
yeah, there's something. Well, you figure I've got 25 sitting here. I wrote out like the types, like the groups, the big ones, spear shaders, ball tip, spoon shaders, calligraphy, and skew are the main ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as in the overarching umbrella where a pen fits. He's on 23.
Yeah, Spence wants to know only the ones for pyrographers.
I'd have to go back and count. Pat does mark them on the website as to what he recommends, or who artist-wise he recommends them for. There are some like bird tips, skews, basket weaving tips that we don't use because it's more for gourd artists and wood carvers. I did not write down this tip.
Greg says you have them all, be honest.
Nope, I don't have them all. I don't.
Burrow wants to know if there's any advantage of the 2B or the 18L or 3B. I guess, why would you use a 2B?
No, I'm thinking. Let me think on that one, and I'll come back. Because the 3B, we probably, what time is it? Whew, we're not going to get to the 3B today. It heats differently, and the stroke's a little different. And that's the thing. If you've got two other tips to do similar strokes, it may not be a good idea to get another pin, unless you want the other pin. I think starting with 4, the recommended gives you a lot of room to move. This is the 13M. I haven't really used it. This is called the fish scale, which also implies that you can use it for snake scale. And see, it gets the pattern, and this is used by both pyographers and carvers. So it makes, you might actually want to go up in heat so that stamping is quicker. This tip is a little different. If you can see, it's not rounded angles, they're sharper angles. And the purpose of that is you can get a line like this. If you don't want to cock your hand like this, you just twist a little bit and you get a thinner line versus the edge line is a little thicker. This is thinner. This also does the undercut shading depending on your heat setting. So you get a darker line and then you get the overburn. This will do good on drawdown burns as long as you keep the full foot or the full surface of the pin angled so that it's even. Not as good on the oval. So this one would be good for buildings, fish, anything with scales, dragons, snakes, dragons, buildings. Let's see how it curves. The curve is a softer curve, meaning you can't like get on it. It won't be a full smooth curve. So you can get a little bit of curve with it. Thinner lines, thicker lines. Oh, we could also stipple with this one, and this would be really small because of the point. So we can get small stippling. We could do a little bit of lettering with it. There's more angled lettering than it would be good for block lettering, because then you could make your D. I'm just gonna draw it in. This is not gonna be clean, but then you can use this tip to also, you would do it with bigger lettering, and you could do that both the outline if you do outlines and the filling in with this pen. That is the thickest we get just using the tip. Alright, let's see here. Because I had the 3B with the spoon shaders, I guess I can, because the 3B is closer to the spoon shader than it is, say, a spear shader. What I'll go ahead and do is we'll look at the 2B. What time are we at? Okay, 15 minutes. So what I'm going to do is switch over to the 3B. Hop in, turn it on, turn it off. And I shall put it under here. I'm going to go back and probably make it where you can see my lettering, my numbering. for the pins. We'll heat that up real quick, and that way, actually what I should have done is put the 3B down by the 2B, since those are the closest together. So we'll do 3B here. Alrighty. So this one's at 4. This has a more rounded curve. Its footprint is a little smaller. And when I mean footprint, I'm just touching down with the foot of the pin. So 2B is bigger than the 3B on its foot. For drawdown, it appears, I'm looking back and forth. Did I not do a drawdown for 2B? Maybe it didn't. I'll do a drawdown right here of 2B. And we can see. For ovals, I don't like this one as much, because sometimes the edge gets caught in the grain, though it is doing a smooth burn. And sometimes I just don't like it. Edge-wise, we got that thin of a line, and that's gonna be our thinnest straighter line. If I go smaller, it'll be a little thicker because more heat is being allowed to enter the wood. If I go quick, there's a little heat. Curve-wise, because this is a curved tip, I should be able... I feel kind of restricted on my curve. It does do it. Crosshatch, we'll do it over here. It'll do, but I don't like the crosshatch as much for the 3B. Stippling, we are only going to get dashes because of how the tip is rounded. We're not going to get the round stippling. But again, this could be used for, say, an aspen tree. You're burning the tree. Burning the tree along. Let's see here. And then you just need maybe some of the textures to it. Then you would flip the pin. You got this texture. Let it heat up a little bit more. The camera keeps touching my lip because I'm bending forward. It makes my face itch. I'm going to heat it up so we can see the footprint better. And then, yeah, it looks like then we're done with the... So that is the footprint of the 3B. I'm doing dark backgrounds. Like I said, I don't care for this one as much. But you can overlap, draw down. It would give you a smooth burn. I'm going to bump it up to 5.5 just so we can see where the tip no longer does a soft burn. Meaning it starts kind of gouging the wood. So this footprint is a little bit smaller than the 18-0. On this wood, which is a Dick Blick board, it is overall even. Now, on camera it looks flat, but if I turn it, it's actually not bad. But even, let's see here. Now, I lifted up, so I wanted to see how even touching down. Okay, I can see it doing a good background.
You really see the smoke coming off of that?
Yeah. You can see where I touched down after having the pin up because it went deeper into the wood. Hot pin. And then I was going to show the 2B drawdown. I'll put that on 5 because I don't think we need it as hot. So the 3B is a little thinner than the 2B. The 2B is a little thinner than the 18S. They're not necessarily all the same size. In fact, maybe I should put the 18M here as well, just so we can see it. Alright, so the drawdown of the 2B. this. Now I did the other one at 5.5, so I'll do this one at 5 just so we can see. And you see this yellowing? That's what I don't like, when the pin's too hot and it yellows the wood around. You can clean it up, but that just means more time on the back end of cleaning versus burning. Oop. See that? There's a big overburn. Alright. It draws down just fine. They're both at 5.5. I would say the burns are about even on that. The 2B is they're about the 2B is thicker, bigger footprint than the 3B. Switch those out, and see, some of this is hard because I say that because I'm also, if I tell you I like a pen or I don't like a pen or this or that, I'm also judging based on how it feels in my hand, how I feel the tip going across the board. So I can't always.
So it's a highly personal experience.
Yes, it is. So you may not like how the pen goes across the board.
So, to be or not to be?
That is the question.
Teresa has a question, though.
Yes, please.
How can you tell when a pen needs replacement or new coating? Bluing, not sure if that's what it's called. Bluing,
Polishing.
Yeah, bluing is...
For guns.
Yeah, it's coating, protective coating for firearms. If you see discoloration like that?
No. Discoloration, because if you look at, say... This is the bluing he's talking about.
She's talking about.
Okay, that is good. You want that. That's part of the polish and the protective coating. I don't have any pens that I've messed up, so let me see if I can grab. Put this down so I don't burn myself. None of my Optima pens are in bad shape. So, I'll have to grab a tip that's not polished by another company, just so you can see if the polish comes off. Alrighty. When it's not polished, the tip will look like this. Let me see here. Versus this one. See the shininess? And when a tip is no longer polished, it'll have carbon that sticks to it easier, so it's harder to clean. Let's see here. Feeling wise, this feels dull. It feels like my finger doesn't fluidly move at one speed. It feels like it's kind of getting caught and slowing me down a little bit. Picture rubbing your finger across plastic and a smooth metal at the same time. That's kind of what it feels like. So this isn't a polished tip at all. This one is a polished tip by Colwood. And you can still see the difference.
So, just on a note, because this is something I'm familiar with. So the polishing, you're abrading the surface down, or the metal down, and because if you don't, in all metals, there's going to be pitting in the surface, and so the further you polish it down, it brings the surface down smooth, so that there's no more pits. And what happens if you have those pits is that carbon will collect in there, kind of like when you use a frying pan and it starts to accumulate stuff in it.
Yeah.
And then like if you try and make pancakes, it sticks.
Yeah, because it's not smooth enough.
Right.
It's
So,
got the micro pits.
Yeah, but But if you keep that pan polished, then food doesn't stick to it. So that's what you're seeing with the Optima is that it's been polished down to past that pitting and in the surface.
Okay.
Any of the irregularities with the surface, so you're getting like a really smooth surface, and it's not catching on stuff, and that's why it's so shiny. It's because you're not catching any of it. There's no pitting for it to catch the light.
Okay, so on the 18S, which is this tip right here, you'll see some black. That's oxidation. You want that. That just helps protect your polish. It's like a second protective coating, and it helps the polish. It helps clean the tip easier. So if it discolors like this, you want that. This, we just use this pen. In fact, we used both these pens and used them at higher heat. But it's a discoloration. It is not carbon. When carbon is stuck to a tip, it's black. When you use that tip across the wood, you feel it catching. It kind of almost feels like, the only way I can really explain it is like a stone that is stuck under something you're rolling out, and you'll kind of feel like a gravelly feel to it. And I'm talking tiny, like stone. You'll feel kind of a gravelly feeling. That's how you'll feel if your tip is dirty as you drag across the wood. And that's when you know you need to clean it. I will do maybe a couple of swipes quick, not even on the area of my strop that has the aluminum oxide, just a little off to the side, and that just wipes anything that's off. Nothing's really going to stick unless I go high heat and build up the carbon on the tip. Now, if you're burning on paper, it will build carbon quicker because the paper does it. All right, so real quick, 4.5, 18M. You show them on the screen.
Hey, paper also has chemicals in it too, right? Is that why?
You really would prefer to burn on cotton, but yes, it has sizing.
Yeah.
Sizing is just gelatin, like clear gelatin. That's in order for the watercolors to sit on top of the paper and not get fully soaked in. That's what makes them brighter. So you will have a bit of it sticking. Okay, so that's our foot on 18M, 18S, and then 18L. Our drag down with just the tip. Again, I'm on 4.5. Now, because I'm at a higher heat with this pen, I can go completely flat, and it will burn a thicker line. We've got our side tip, like on the 13. Our stippling. And what was I going to check with this? Oh, and my oval circles. And see, I'm using just the tip here, but I can really get a smooth blend. So when I'm using this, I use it a lot for gradients. So in going dark, I go quicker and pull out to go lighter. I'm moving quicker. And then if there's any seam, I would speed up a little bit, draw out, go back and forth until I got more of a clean transition. Smoother. Alright. Oh, and I said I could write with it. This is a higher heat. So if you're doing block lettering, this is another good pen to do with the block lettering. In fact, I should be able to get a better curve with this one in theory. And then fill it in. Mind you, in doing block lettering, more than likely you're doing a bigger letter than that. Okay. So the 18s are for 18 small and medium are for all your general shading. You can do lines, fur, hair, trees, grass, buildings, landscape rocks, filling in letters. I don't know that I wouldn't outline any little letters with that. Stippling, bushes, trees. That's for the 18S and M. The 18 large. Backgrounds, thicker groups of fur or hair. The 2B is very similar to the 18. It's in between the 18 small and the 18M. It heats differently. It has a thinner stroke like the 18M on its side. Does a nice even background or dark area depending on your wood. This is birch. Let's see, 13M. That's snake scales, fish scales, dragons, any kind of like triangular patterns that you want. So actually, if you're kind of doing like the almost similar to the what do they call it, stole painting?
Stole painting.
Yeah. Never mind. You can use it for stamping. Like if you could use this for flower petals, where you just stamp it in a circle. Has more of a fence post. Oh, this one, the 13M, would be a good fence post where you're touching down and just dragging. That's a fence post with one stroke. I don't care for it on the circular motion. It has a nice undercut, so great for buildings. Has multiple thicknesses on the tip. Actually, it's quite versatile tip. I probably should use it more.
Okay.
I like everybody. I get in a groove where there's certain pens I like for certain things, and I just grab it and go and blah 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 blah. I do need to try that pen out more. 3B, nice even backgrounds, thin edge strokes. It's got a smaller footprint. In fact, out of all of our spear type shaders, the 3B. That's why I was putting it in with the spoon shaders, because the footprint of the 3B is similar to a spoon shader. So if you got the 3B and you got the 18, you got the S, you don't necessarily need the 2B. Especially if you've also got a spoon shader, you wouldn't necessarily need a 2B or vice versa. So that's definitely a choice. So if you've got the extra large spoon shader and the 2B, I don't know that you necessarily need the 3B, but we'll look at that more next week. Again, the pens that I recommend, I probably should write them in. So while we're talking, there's 4 pens that I recommend to start with, unless you're doing lettering, and then it shifts. I recommend turning on the right pen, the 18M Spear Shader. Let's write that in. I'm using the small ball tip to do this because it's a small area. 18M. The 19M. Like, see this. This will be a good one to discuss next week. The 9M and the 17 SR. Those are the general ones I recommend to start with. And if you get really good with these, if you get really comfortable and you can just go and go, it may be a long while before you decide you want another pen. So it's kind of like using limited colors, a limited color palette where you learn to mix all these different colors from maybe, 3 to 5 colors. So you're not using every paint out there, you're mixing so they work together better. It's kind of the same thing with starting off with just a few pens. Now, I don't necessarily recommend starting with just 2, because that will make you feel like you're missing out, and maybe there's other things you could do but you can't seem to do, and it kind of causes a frustration. And I think sometimes ordering too many pins at once, so unless you live out of country, out of the U.S., where it's cheaper to buy multiple pins, more than 4, and have them shipped all at once, so you're not paying extra fees and customs and shipping and all that other stuff. Anything more than 4 can be overwhelming, and you're like, where do I go? What do I start with? What do I do? And when you feel overwhelmed, you tend to shut down. And when you tend to shut down, then you're burning less. And if you're burning less, you're learning less. And if you're learning less, you tend to walk away from burning at that point because you're not feeling connected to it. So it can pay off to stick to just 4 tips for quite a while until you really feel comfortable with them. It's definitely not a contest on who has more pins. Just as a note, this is not a sponsored video, nor will next week or any of my pin posts. But other than the original 17 Corsair, Pat did send me all of these pins because if somebody had a question or I had a question, I would ask Pat to send me a pin so that I could test it and see what I thought. Sometimes he recommended a pin for me that maybe I liked or didn't like for how I burn. And that's definitely going to be something else. We all burn differently. Even if you're trying to burn similar to how I'm showing you in the videos, because you're not me, it will be different. It'll be your strokes with very, very, very similar techniques. And maybe there's just a pin that you don't like as much. And that is totally cool. These different types of pins also do apply to different types of wood burners. The shape is all very similar. They all similar work together. I'm going to put this on the side just so we still have something on screen. Yes, Optima. Optima does, the Optima pins do work on the Burnmaster, the Coldwood. Pat makes a special cord for Optima pins to work on razor tip, also on the nibs burner base. Any place where you can plug in both ends of the cord, the pins will work. So if you have a Coldwood but you see a pin Optima pin you like, you absolutely can use them together. Trying to think. What I'll do is I will just show my recommended, because I don't mind answering questions, but I do get it a lot. So if I can just show you, might be easier. Let's see here. Now you'll see 2 on some of my pins. Those are the ones that I tend to use at higher heat. 3 is too heavy. And I'm missing a pawn. 19. Aha, there we go. So again, this is the 18M. That could be switched out for the 18S. It depends on if you want a little different burn. Sometimes the 18S is easier to use. The 9M, the 19M, and the 17SR. Again, this is a V-cut. So it might look like it's a blunt round, but there's actually a V grind into this tip that you can't see, but you can definitely feel it, both on your finger and on the wood.
So is that your set?
This is my set. This is the Drawing with Fire set, through Pat or through Mountain Wood Carvers.
Okay. The 5?
These are 4 pins.
Oh, I saw that.
4 pins. 4 pins.
Sorry.
1 pin.
Okay.
Ha ha ha. 2 pin. Ha ha ha.
Paul,
3 pin.
Paul wants to know, did you just say that you use Optima pins on a razor tip?
Only if you get the Optima cord, because the way Pat makes it allows it to plug into your razor tip. Now the tip is going to probably burn excuse me, a little differently, and that's because the razor tip base has a little less power, so you might have to turn up the pin a little bit in order to get a similar burn that you see that I get for that. So if you want a similar burn that I get at 3, you may have to go 3.5 on the base, Burl has the cord for razor tip. So Burl, if you can chime in to the chat for Paul. Paul's also in the group, so we can also discuss it there. But yes, in theory, as long as you have the Optima cord, which you can order it with a pin, you just make sure you tell Pat that you're using, that you need an Optima cord for razor tip base, and there's certain things that he does to the cord in order for you to plug it in. Because if you try razor tip and Burmmaster talk about an attachment RC jack that you can use. I really don't want to show it. That you can use to connect razor tip to the other brands. You really don't want to use it, and Pat will talk to you about that. They melt easy and can burn out pins and blah blah blah.
How much longer are we going?
We're finishing up. So if Burl's still here.
I believe she is.
Living in the UK, I wonder, do I just order pins first with the cord as I have a razor tip? I would get in contact with Pat. It wouldn't be a bad idea to go that way. And down the road, you're going to want to upgrade to the Optima, only because it's just more sturdy than the razor tip. Yep, Burl just chimed in. Yes, order the cord with the pins. And there's special cords that Pat makes in order to use the Optima pins on the razor tip base. Alrighty, we got everything. Anything else? Next week we're doing spoon shaders, ball tips, and the skews. Yeah, we'll be able to get through them all. I don't see going through a third week for this. Next month's project is getting started on, what is it, the 1st? I'll have to look at the calendar to see when our live is for that. And that is going to be the owl. I'm finishing up the fox. Gonna have the fox real quick. I'm just gonna show it on camera, and we are going not that far. And the wood. Okay, go. Do what you need to do. Tell them bye.
Bye, everybody.
He's stepping out.
Yep.
This is the fox. I've got the background closer to where I want it. I started working on the fur. I'll get this done before next month. I'm not going to competition this week. Had a bad week. And a family tragedy on Sunday morning. So I'm not going to stress myself to get it done. Alrighty. If we don't have any more questions, don't forget to hit the like button. I should always be asking you to hit the like button at the beginning so that YouTube will let everybody know that I'm live. And if you're watching this on replay and you're new, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I do a lot more of this. In fact, we're almost to 200 videos on this channel. Woohoo! Anything else? I shouldn't have had coffee before lunch and nap time. Not a good thing. Don't forget, I gotta find it. There's something I really don't want you to forget. But if I can't find it, then I can't show it to you. And if I can't show it to you, then it makes no sense. Where is it at? Where's it at? Where's that? No. For whatever reason, everything's gotten switched around, and I didn't say it could be, but it did. Go away. There it is. Don't forget that you are awesome. Come on. You are awesome. You can do this. You're a pyro artist. Happy burning, guys. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye-bye.